We're so thankful to CALIBA for hosting us and for the chance to publish books in an otherwise kind of unstable season. I just love each and every one of our Fall 20 books. And I remember when the world first shut down, we didn't even know if we were going to have a Fall 20. So it feels like a very precious list. And so when this opportunity came up to all be in one place at one time, we said yes, for sure. So I want to kick things off by introducing our Cameron Kids team. We are lean but mighty. First off, we have Amy Noveski, who's our editorial director and needs almost no introduction. She's somewhat of a legend and an accomplished author herself. She also has a fall book out called Girl on a Motorcycle. If you haven't seen it, pick it up. It's stunning. And then we have Melissa Nelson Greenberg, our amazing art director, who joined us in 2016 with decades of design and art direction experience. And she is just such a pleasure to work with, as I'm sure all the illustrators on the call will tell you. She's the most encouraging collaborative out there. And I joke that having Melissa art direct you is better than therapy. So we're so grateful to have her. And then also we have Callan Van Paris on the call, who makes sure that all these beautiful books get out into the world. And she helped organize this event today. So we're so grateful. Before we jump in with our authors and illustrators, I wanted to tell you just a little bit about our acquisition process and what we look for. We have a saying, kind of a shorthand, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. A list as small as ours, we just don't have space for. Sure, that could work. So we really wait for that gut instinct, and we look for very specific things. We look for clean, poetic and clever storytelling, and we look for fresh art that really pushes outside of the picture book space. So I think all of these books have those attributes, and we're so excited to talk about each of them with you. First up, we have the dashing duo behind A is for Apple, Unless, and I happen to have a copy here. Author Tom Llewellyn and Mark Hoffman. Hi, welcome. Can you guys wave so everyone knows who you are? There they are. So Tom, I want to start with you and ask you where this crazy idea came from. We get a lot of alphabet books and we turn most of them away. But this
sure. I wish I had a better answer, but I'm really have traditionally been more of a middle reader author. I have 4 middle reader books out that are novel length that take me, like 2 years to write one. And then my agent, Abigail Samoon from Red Fox Literary, said, some of your sections are really funny. You should take a crack at writing some picture book manuscripts. And so, I just kind of dive into this thing. And then I think I wrote 30 manuscripts, and she, and one of them kind of rose to the top. And she's like, I think this one makes sense. And I think it's just the kind of juxtaposition, the kind of fun idea of turning something on its head. I have, I know I'm supposed to say that my kind of lodestars of writers were, all Newbery winners, but I'm more of like a Mad Magazine guy as a kid. And that's kind of totally was trying to channel that sort of, slightly troublemaking tone in this book. So
I think that's what we loved about it, was the Mad Men. Amy, what did you think when you first read the manuscript? What jumped out to you?
It was so funny. I laughed so hard reading it the first time, and every time I read it, even to the finished copy, which is really rare because by the time you get a finished copy of a book, you've probably read the story hundreds of times. And while you love it dearly, you probably don't need to read it ever again. But this one, even like when I read it now, it still cracks me up. I just think it's so funny, and that's such a rare quality. I think that you would think that funny books would be fairly common, that we see that a lot, and we actually don't. And so I have 2 sort of guides to, like, things that sort of are things to set aside. And one is stories that make me cry, which is not too hard on certain days. But stories that make me laugh. And so this one definitely did, and it still does. And I think it's just so funny, and it's irreverent too. And I love to push buttons. So this one definitely pushes some few buttons, and at least one reviewer agreed, and I kind of take that as a badge of honor.
Definitely a badge of honor. And then Melissa, I know you don't love potty humor always, but you loved this script and you thought of Mark. So what made you
Yeah, it is funny. Of the three of us, I think I'm the most Emily Post, so to speak. And but this book, I agree. It just makes you laugh so hard, and especially now that is so needed. And so it was kind of a no-brainer. Mark, you just like popped into my head when I read this manuscript. It was like, who can do really funny, who can also make it beautiful at the same time? And it's very bold humor for kids, and I thought also needed bold artwork and really graphic and really cool and engaging characters. So I mean, the thing that you also do so well is pouring in little details. So like Amy said, this book you can read over and over again. It always makes you laugh. Well, and then with the art, you can always find something new, some little cute detail that you wove in throughout. There's so many reasons. The pacing, you get movement in there with your characters. So it was just, I sometimes get these little pings when I read a manuscript of what art should go with that. And luckily you said yes, Mark.
Well, Mark, what drew you to the manuscript? And I mean, how do you choose your projects? I know you're in high demand, so you can't say yes to everything.
The one that actually got me is, I'd read some alphabet books throughout my time. I have a little kid who's now 7, so I've seen quite a few of them over the years. And the one that got me actually was the page for X, which is, it essentially says X is for, in fact, Tom probably knows it better than I do, but X is for xylophone or X-ray. It's either one or the other. And to me, that was so sort of fourth wall breaking, sort of on the nose of what alphabet books are, and called attention to it. Yeah, right there. That I guess it was funny for me. I think that's the one that a bunch of them made me laugh out loud, but that one in particular was like quintessentially this book. It was that kind of humor, and I do potty humor. I get it. But that one was like highbrow in a way for a potty humor book. So I loved it.
Potty humor. I think
There you go.
So Tom and Mark, I'm going to ask you guys a question, a kind of touchy-feely question that I promise I'm going to ask everybody. And I apologize in advance for how generic it might sound, but I can't shake the sense that the books that are coming out this season were meant to come out this season. And it's a very special vintage, the books of 2020. So my question is, why this book and why right now?
I had somebody contacted me just recently, and they said they bought a big stack of these to give out to the Mary Bridge Children's Hospital in Tacoma. It's an organization that works with kids who are going through cancer treatment. And because this is not a big message book, that's something that does not come naturally to me. And I love books of every genre. The genre I tend to write in is just goofy, humor and adventure stories and things like that. But I think that's, not that we want to escape reality, but sometimes we want to escape reality. Sometimes you just need a break, and good-natured break that nobody's on the brunt of the joke. It's just, can we all laugh at things that we all have experienced and that sort of thing. And so when I got that note, I actually did start crying, because I think maybe I have low testosterone or something, but I cry really easily too. But I think that sometimes humor is just, boy, you just need it. So, and it feels like we need it right now.
Yeah.
I've seen some reviews of my work over the years that have made me cry. I'll say that. I for me, I think it's the ability to sort of let free all the pent up stress and everything in this book is allows me to laugh at things that are not necessarily topical. Let's put it that way. And I credit to you for sort of picking something, 2 years back to hit at a time when we really need a laugh. That has hopefully made some little kids out there giggle, and some parents at the same time. So
It definitely has. I can attest to that, even just in my home. I still laugh and the kids howl. So, well, thank you both so much. We're going to come back to you with more Q&A at the end. Next, we are switching gears to this beauty. Get Up, Elizabeth. Even a queen must get out of bed. And we're joined today by author Sharon Bridges and illustrator Aaliyah Marley, who's up. Is it midnight yet, Aaliyah, in England? Okay, so it's tomorrow. This is a really sweet book about a young Queen Elizabeth getting ready for the day. So Sharon, I'm curious, where did this inspiration to write about Queen Elizabeth and the style of this writing, where did it start? Nope, I think you might be muted.
Yes, I was going to say that I've been a history nerd for all my life, and I happened to sit in on a workshop at a writers' conference where they were doing some generative exercises and talking about, oh, how can you take nonfiction and make something fictional out of it? And I had just read a book, Tracy Borman's book, about the Tudors and the private lives of the Tudors. And I thought, oh, that would be really fun to do that for kids, because there's so many great details in there that, and there's so many children. I've got nephews and nieces who have such a hard time getting out of bed, and it's always a struggle with parents to get them out of bed. And I kind of thought, if they only knew how easy they have it nowadays compared to what the Tudors had to go through. And so it just started there. I saw it. I used to be a creative director in advertising, and I also used to run my own publishing company, Goose Bottom Books. So I think very visually, and I saw it as this one kid, and all you ever see of her is like all this red hair, and you can't see her face, and you don't know who she is, and she's getting out of bed. And as the book progresses, the things that she does seem to get stranger and stranger and stranger. And it's not until the end that you realize that you're actually in Tudor times, and this is the little girl who grows up to be Queen Elizabeth getting out of bed. So that's basically the premise, and that's how it started. And it's written in verse. It's the 19th picture book, I think, that I've published, but it's the first one written in verse. And that comes down to the encouragement of Amy Nevesky, who I've worked with for years and years, because I said to her, she said, well, why don't you show me a draft? And I said, well, I can't. It keeps coming to me in verse. And everyone says not to attempt that if you don't do it well. And she said, well, I think you can do it. Just give it a bash and let's see what we've got. And so out came the book.
That leads perfectly to my next question, which was, Amy, what drew you to this book? And I know you and Sharon go way back. Do you want to give a little context to your first ever book together?
So Sharon and I met back when I was at Chronicle Books it's almost 25 years ago. And I pulled her first picture book story out of the slush pile called Ruby's Wish. And I immediately, it was a hell yes for me then, was hell yes even before we had hell yes at Cameron. It was like, I love this. And unfortunately, I was just about to leave Chronicle, but I was like, I have to get this book acquired. So I pushed really hard to get it acquired, and luckily it was, and I handed it off to Victoria Rock at the time, who is just their stellar editorial director. And she and the art director at the time found this little known illustrator named Sophie Blackall, and that was her very first published picture book. And Sharon and Sophie both went on to win the Ezra Jack Keats Award for brand new author and illustrator. And Sophie, of course, has gone on to win at least 2. I think my instincts were right on that one. And ever since that day, Sharon and I have been friends ever since. And we've worked on several books over the years. And I was, once I was in a position to acquire again at camera, and one of the first people I thought of was Sharon, and how can we get her on the list? And she's always, she always has, I'm always amazed by how prolific she is, how many really just fun, clever ideas she has, especially when it comes to history, because it really is a history buff. She really knows her stuff. Like the fun, obscure details too. That's what's fun about having a conversation with her. So this just was a natural, like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I love this. So yeah.
Yeah, and then I know, Melissa, we looked for a long time for the perfect illustrator. We really needed somebody who could tackle that hair. We considered the hair a character. So talk about how you found Aaliyah and what that process was like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it was interesting because Shirin actually came with some sketches with the manuscript, and they had like the spirit of what I think we wanted the whole book to look like. They were modern and fresh, but who could do that? And I remember when I was looking through, I feel like I looked about 200 illustrators for this book. And then I came upon your work, Aaliyah, and I was like, I saw a couple of pictures where you had done the hair, and it was like, that has to be her hair. And it was the line and the intricacy, but yet also this emotion and spirit, because she has this spirit that we have to capture on every page of the book, and I could see that in your characters and your portfolio. And then once we started talking, and you said you were also really interested in historical details and all of that, I was like, this is it. This is the perfect match. And it was just such a wonderful experience to work with you, Aaliyah. It was our first book together. And it was lots of fun.
Aaliyah, what was your process like? Did you learn things about the Elizabethan era throughout this process, or did you already know most of these details?
I've always been interested in all of the historical stuff and the details and tapestries and clothing. So I definitely learned things when it came to this, because there's just so much to it. And obviously I didn't want to skim on any of the details when I'm drawing and everything. It was very fun to illustrate. It's probably one of my favorite books I've done, to be honest.
Oh, good. We're so glad to hear it. I know I didn't know about almond paste and brushing your teeth with soot. And
neither did I. It's a bizarre thing, isn't it?
Yeah. That'll be our next virtual event. We'll try it all. Well, I'm going to put you two in the hot seat as well and ask you why this book and why right now.
Aaliyah, do you want to go first?
I think it's probably best if you do, because it's your story.
Okay. So why this book and why now? I think one of the things that I like about this book is that, and I just read it last night to my 7-year-old niece, and I like kind of the message at the end of it, which is that if you think that you've got it bad now, it's, in historical terms, this is nothing. And a lot of times, I think, quite frankly, with COVID, that everyone gets down, and we need a little humor. But I also think we also need like the bigger perspective, which is that human society has been through worse many, many times, and we've made it through. And there's a reason to actually get out of bed the next day and keep plugging on. So I didn't want to get too heavy, but that's what I like about this book.
Thank you.
I like that there's stuff that you can learn whilst seeing like all the details of the stuff in Tudor times, and then when you get to the end of the book, it shows that there's a creature hidden in each page. And I think that's great for kids to then go back and then they can try and find it, and they'll probably see things that they didn't see the first time. I think it's important to have stuff like that happening.
Actually, when I read my 7-year-old niece, the book last night, when we got to the end, she thanked me. She said it was great. And then she picked up the book and went page by page looking for the mouse. That was a huge success, Melissa.
I think that was Aaliyah's idea, actually, to have that, wasn't it? I think it was. That mouse was just so cute, and then it had to be on every page. So
it was fun finding places to hide it, because I have some people I've given the book to, and they find the mouse on some pages. I think I probably hid it too well.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing your work with us, and we're just so happy to have you on the list. Next up, we have our most recent release, this beautiful picture book, The Good Song, a story inspired by Somewhere Over the Rainbow and What a Wonderful World. So joining us today, we have Alex Giardino and illustrator Penelope Zolahan. Hi. Welcome to both of you. This one, Alex, we've been working on a long time, and it is so close to my heart. Can you talk about your initial inspiration to write this story?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all for coming in and talking about these books. I'm really honored to be part of this list. You know, the song, it's all about the song. You know, it is this song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I distinctly remember the first time I heard the song. Those first few ukulele notes they pull at your heartstrings. They certainly touched my heart. So this book was kind of born out of that song. And then I fell into his life. I really took a deep dive into trying to understand him and the context in which he was singing this medley. And I cried a lot writing this book because I was so moved by all of his music and by his story. So this one was a very emotional journey, that's for sure. And I hope that, I guess I'm maybe jumping ahead to the final question, but I hope that the heart connection in this book really reaches a lot of children. I feel like that is his legacy, was to reach out to all of us through that beautiful playing and that voice that he had. If you haven't all heard this song, you have to hear his version. It's really something. It feels timeless. So it was like an honor for me to tell this story and to try to share more of that music with a whole other generation of kids.
And then Amy, I know that the islands are so close to your heart. Was it that sense of place that drew you to this manuscript, or what jumped out to you?
Well, Alex and I had worked on Ode to an Onion, and the story I saw for the very first time in one of my writing workshops at Book Passage years and years ago. And I, you know, again, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, this is special. This is really cool. But at the time, I wasn't associated with a publishing house. I really couldn't do much with it, but I could help her make it stronger in the least. And then when things started moving along with Cameron Kids, and I started thinking about who would I want to have on this list and what kinds of books, I immediately thought of Alex and Ode to an Onion, which was one of our very first books, and it's one of our most beautiful books. And then the next question was, what else do you have? What else on? And I'll mention the story, which of course for me resonated deeply. I have yes, Nina said, a strong connection to Hawaii. And so I was like, yes, absolutely. I would love to tell this story. Yeah, so it was quite a journey. It was a lot of work, but I'm so pleased with how it turned out. And I think that it's coming out at just the right moment. These two songs are, if you don't know, the Good Song is a medley of two very famous songs, Somewhere Over the Rainbow and What a Wonderful World. And they're both these songs of, well, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, of sort of yearning for this better world and a sense of hope for finding, you know, that that Place Over the Rainbow, as made famous by Judy Garland and The Wizard of Oz. And then What a Wonderful World, of course, is Louis Armstrong's song. And it's just, you know, a beautiful, very present song about like how wonderful the world is. So the culmination of these two songs brings together sort of this like, you know, sense of sadness and hope, and also this sense of joy, and this combination of joy and sadness in one song is, I think, what makes this medley that is created so powerful. And I have to say, every time I hear it, and it's, you know, it's played a lot for sure, but every time I hear it, I smile and then I cry. It makes me feel both emotions that I seek when making books, you know, being able to smile and cry, and all in one song. And I think that's a really rare gift. So to be able to portray the story of the song and a little bit about Iz's life into a book in Alex's really poetic language, and Penelope's incredibly beautiful artwork was just a dream come true.
I know. I think it was that dualism of the hope and also kind of a haunting tone that we knew we had to find the perfect illustrator who could do something bright and cheery, but also a little bit full of shadow and depth. And Melissa, talk about how we found Penelope and her exciting news. Oh, I think you're muted.
I just got that notification as I was talking, sorry. I'll share the good news at the end. But yeah, you know, to echo off what Amy was saying about how do you express that emotion on a page? I mean, really, it's incredible when one kind of art form can be, you know, meant to be made into other art forms. So essentially, how do we take this song and Alex's words and put it on paper and make it this visual world that kids can just feel enveloped in, as you do when you listen to the song. And it was pretty incredible when Penelope and I first talked. You were like, I love that song. We play that song all the time in my house. And I think we had you do a sample maybe just to make sure that, you know, you really were in love with it as much as we were. And because that's what we really love to do with pairing artists and text, is everyone needs to love what they're working on, right? And so Penelope, your work, it was your palette. I mean, that the color, the rainbow, I mean, you have to feel the rainbow that weaves throughout the book in your heart when you're reading this story, and you just immediately put that in the book. And then, you know, I was thinking about the whole process, and just the way that your personality is too, Penelope, is that hope and that brightness, and it just makes you smile. And the whole project has kind of been like that on the visual side. And yeah, it's just been a beautiful project to work on. And
great. And then Penelope, I can't see you anymore. Are you still here? I hope she didn't.
Oh, you know what? While she's taking a pause, should I announce the exciting news?
Oh, sure.
Okay, great. So, you know, the Original Art Society of Illustrators show in New York. Well, normally it's in New York. This year it will be virtual, but it's always such an honor to have any artwork included in that show. And Penelope's artwork from The Good Song has been chosen to be a part of the Original Art Show, which is very exciting.
Zoom applause. Yeah, it's just so well deserved, and she has been so incredibly flexible and wonderful to work with. So, and I know Alex, you're thrilled to have the artwork out there too. And I think we've definitely touched on it already, but just to wrap up this title, Alex, why this book and why right now?
I hope you all can't hear my dog snoring in the background.
It's okay.
I decided to fall asleep right when it was my turn. First of all, I am so honored to be sharing this book with Penelope. She sent me a digital file so that I could print what is one of my favorite images, the opening one with the grandfather holding the baby. And I printed it, and it's over my son's bed, and it feels like this sort of protective spirit. I read this book to a pod of kids, kindergartners and first graders last week, and it just so happened that two girls in the pod, two sisters, had lost their grandmother a week before. And for me, their reaction to the story and the emotional connection that I got to have with not just the sisters, but the small group of kids was so powerful. We danced together, and we talked about how they're still connected to their grandmother through their hearts. In this story, there's a repeated line about how music goes from one heart, the good song goes from one heart to another. And that's what really connects us. It connects all of us, right? That the children who are so I'm really hopeful that the children who get a chance to have this book in their lives really understand and connect with that message. I feel like we all need this message right now, despite this disembodied way that we're relating to each other, that we're all connected from our heart to another heart.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to put out there.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. And Penelope, you're back. We've just been gushing about you while you were gone.
Well, I'm sorry I missed it. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. It just crashed all around, but I'm here.
Happens. It just happens.
Yes.
We announced that you are going to be included in the original art show, which is just such an amazing honor, and we're so happy for you.
Thank you. Yes, it's quite an honor. I'm very, very happy about that for sure.
And then if you want to just give us a little peek into what your process was like and why you feel like this book resonates right now.
Yeah, so this was a really fun book for me because I love bright colors, and so this was my opportunity to just let them all shine, which was really fun. But it was nice to be able to temper that too with the story, having it be a story that is one that kind of reaches down a little bit too. So it's a tender story, and when I first read the manuscript, I could not stop crying. I usually read all the scripts to my daughter and husband out loud, so this one I just couldn't even get through. And I thought, oh, well, this is perfect, so it would be a nice challenge to be able to, and a challenge and an honor to take this story and bring it to life visually. So it was a fun one to work on for me. Alex did an amazing job.
We're so glad you worked on it. And I agree, it made me cry the first time I read it too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We're going to ask more questions at the very end, but right now we're going to switch gears to this beautiful book, When You Breathe. And we're joined by the author, Dr. Diana Farid, and the incredible illustrator, Billy Rankle. Hello to you both. So Diana, I wanted to start with you and ask, as a physician, what inspired you to tackle science in such a poetic way?
Thanks so much for asking. Thank you, CALIBA, for having me and Billy and the Cameron team here. When I was taking care of patients before I had kids, my patients who were young children, if they had respiratory symptoms, they wouldn't really necessarily know much about how their lungs were working. And to sort of help them understand why they were feeling what they were feeling and why the treatments that I might be describing to them would work, I would tell them the story. I tried to animate what was happening in their body in this way. And then when I had my first child and I held her and I felt the breath from her nose on my neck, it gave me this sense of questioning, how can I impart in a way that evokes the same awe I have about the body to her? How can I impart to her this understanding of her body and understanding that her voice is important and profound and loved, and that it's connected to everything else in the world and to other people. So the story was born at that time. And I felt like, I like reading poetry, I like writing poetry, and I felt that poetry would be the best way to try to evoke that sense of awe. All of the other anatomy books that I saw for children at that time were very much like anatomy books made light. There really wasn't a narrative or a story or much emotion evoked in it. And so I felt like this was needed in the world, and that's how I decided to approach it in that way.
Well, it's just so beautiful. I remember the first time I read it, I was stunned by the metaphor of your lungs being an upside down tree. And I think that kind of led us to Billy indirectly. Amy, can you remember how we found Billy? I mean, he's easy to find, but.
Well, we're always looking for artists, and this book, we had sort of a sense of what we wanted the art to look like, and it wasn't though until I actually have the book here, I picked up a copy of his sister's book called Late Migrations, which is a really beautiful book. No doubt about it. I loved it. But what I loved even more was the cover. And the cover and all the artwork inside. But the cover was like, when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, this is exactly how I envision our book. Just like this girl in profile, just filled with the flowers and foliage and birds and butterflies. And so it was sort of a gamble, but we reached out to Billy. I say gamble only because, he, at the time, we didn't know, much about Billy, and if he did, picture books, or if he was just a fine artist, if he was even interested in kids' books. Sometimes we reach out to fine artists to ask if they'll illustrate a picture book, and they're like, no, I don't do that. But so we reached out to Billy, and he was just so immediately excited and gracious and up for the task. And it was a task. It was a big, complicated book, and yet Billy did it with such grace. And the art for this book is just it's so spectacular. I think any of you who know the story of this book will probably get tired of us talking about how we all saw it at our Christmas party last year. All the art was out on the table, and we rarely get to see art for our books because oftentimes it's done digitally and it just goes from one computer to the next. But Billy is one of those rare artists that works by hand. So all the art came in, and he also does a lot of cut paper and collage. And so there's just so much depth and texture to it. And it just absolutely stunning. So it was a real delight to work with Billy. But I feel like I'm overstepping into Melissa's territory now.
Well, Melissa, Billy, talk about your process and how it led to that moment we got to look at the art and weep.
I'm sorry, was that towards me? You cut out for 1 second. Am I answering, or is Billy answering now?
Why don't you start with what you saw on Billy's website and which
Absolutely
we're looking for, and then Billy will get to you.
Well, the funny thing about Amy saying stepping into my territory, that we don't really have territories. The three of us, as you guys all know, we all work completely collaboratively, and with you as well. And that's, I think, kind of the beauty of the way that we work together. And you said it perfectly when you said how Billy's art took the text and handled it with grace. I mean, there's so much grace in this book and in your artwork, Billy. And to rewind a little bit, when Amy first brought the book and your name to the table, and we were discussing about who could illustrate this beautiful poetic text, Diana, I just love it. I just immediately went to your website and just started like pouring into all of your fine art. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I had this feeling of all the little flowers, becoming the way that a flower blossoms, the way that it would feel to breathe, and how we could get that across to children, but also be incredibly poetic and lift up the art of picture book to another level, in a poetic fashion. And it was really exciting to see how you took that, Billy, because this was a hard book to do because it has science and it has poetry, and we want to make children interested in it too. And you did it with all the little layers and the details, and it was fascinating to see. And I just think it came out beautifully.
Thanks a lot.
So Billy, I know it was a stressful process for you. It probably didn't feel graceful the whole time.
It did not. No. It's my first book, and I didn't know how to make a book. And happily, Melissa was like a real hero, coaching me through the process. But as to whether or not, like the question of whether I would take it when Amy first contacted me, like there was no question at all. I like Diana had this, mine was just in a single anatomy and physiology class in college rather than medical school, which Diana went to, but you know, it was a transformative class for me. And I told Diana when we first met, I think the point of the class was to demystify the body, and it failed completely at that because I just felt the body just became more and more and more marvelous, like at the cellular level. And the idea that I could make some work that would communicate that to kids and to parents who were like sharing a moment before bedtime, like what an honor.
It really is incredible. And then to be where we are and what we're living through right now, have this book come out, I mean, it is just, I remember, we think we all looked at each other in my backyard, Amy and Melissa, like, oh, wow, this is coming out right when people need to understand how incredible the process of breath is and how we cannot take it for granted. So I guess that leads us to why this book, why right now, from both of you, if you wouldn't mind.
Diana?
Yeah. I think of the answer to that question on so many levels. I think there's this amazing opportunity to share with children the science of how their body works, but in a way that's engaging and in a way that matches the profound way in which things work. That even though it may not be simple, in a way it is, and that it is accessible. And so I think on one level that's incredibly important. And I do often wonder if we all as children had that opportunity to be engaged with the science of how our bodies worked, how would our world be responding a little bit more differently now? So I think that's a wonderful thing and a wonderful opportunity. And I think the other thing that's the other levels in which it's why this book, why right now, is I think it really underscores the connection that we all have to one another in the substances that we're made of and in the things that we share. It allows us to gain a respect, I think, for our environment and each other's beings on a level that's very physical and on a level that maybe is a little bit more exactly what Alexandria was mentioning, more on the level of the heart. And I think we need that right now. I think we need to see that we're more alike than we are different in terms of how we all want to be seen and share the beauty that we all have with each other and be recognized in that way.
Absolutely, thank you. Billy, what did you want to add?
In addition to the value of everybody like consciously thinking about sort of mechanically how breath works, I am so grateful that long before COVID-19, when I was first talking to Melissa about the book, you know, it was really her idea to make the breath visible in the book. And I wasn't, like, I was sort of baffled by that for a long time. And we went through a lot of sort of variations on what breath might look like. And I ended up designing those little particles. I was at the Metropolitan in New York and saw these pre-classical Greek gold ornaments that seemed like the perfect shapes. But if benevolent forces in the universe, conspired for this book to come out now, I would say it's because we need to be able to explain to kids this thing which is usually invisible, your breath, like why you have to wear a mask and why you have to, under Melissa's sort of direction, the breath was made visible, and I think that's perfect for right now.
Yes, it's just such a stunning book. Thank you both.
Thanks.
So for
Thank you.
And then we have our final title of the season. I'm excited to introduce you to the incredible women behind Brown, The Many Shades of Love. So joining us, we have Nancy and Constance, Nancy Johnson-James and Constance Moore. I think I speak for Amy and Melissa when I say this was the fastest hell yes we've ever said. I mean, it was a matter of 30 minutes, I think, that we reached right out. It was so incredibly moving, and it was all there. We just sensed that all we'd have to do was get out of the way and let this soar, because it was so exquisite. So Nancy, can you tell us where this book came from and where the idea first came to you?
Well, it's not quite like a lightning bolt situation. I will say the book is inspired by my own family, and if you look at my family, it looks like the family in the book. And when I say that, that sort of highlights the fact that while the book is kind of about skin, it's really not. It's about relationships, and it's really about love. That's what's central to it. And I'm also an educator, and so I feel like love and relationship is very essential to educating young children. And so that's sort of the next extension of relationships that really inspired the book. I write poetry and quite honestly, a lot of political poetry, which I think is also rooted in love, but this is a different kind of conversation. And I think it's one that I both wanted to have, but also one that I needed. And I think if I was 4 years old, I would have needed that conversation. So.
And then you and Constance were friends and colleagues already. So I know you showed the manuscript to Constance. And Constance, what were your initial thoughts or vision for the book?
Yeah, so Nancy and I have not taught together at the same school, but we are colleagues as teachers. And Nancy showed me the manuscript and asked me to illustrate it, excuse me. And immediately I wanted, because I really love the way she put the words and the descriptions together. So it was, I mean, I'm not a children's book, or I wasn't, I am now, a children's book illustrator. I'm an elementary school art teacher. And so that was really the connection. Like, this is really something that I know my students need, and I could see right away would be perfect for the classroom. So that's kind of how it started for me.
And Constance is also just a unique art educator. She tells her students that their work isn't just cute, that it's important, and treats them like artists. And I feel that she brings that to her work.
Thank you. Blush, blush. Well, I really appreciate that, Nancy. Thank you. And same to you. Yeah, I do feel that children's art and children as artists is really essential. And I love being an elementary school art teacher, and I miss my kids so much. like being in the classroom with them. And there is really an inspiration for the book in that way, that they make these really bold, strong lines. And so I tried to kind of imitate what they would do if they were making a portrait. So
I think, yeah, that's been coming across in some of the rave reviews you both have been getting, that the art is so accessible and kid-friendly and also kind of ethereal. Melissa, what was the art development like? I know we did very little, but what was that?
Essentially, we packaged it. You guys really brought it to the table. It was pretty much done, but I just wanted to add in a little note. You know, I didn't get the opportunity to be the catalyst to find an artist for the beautiful text. This time you guys, you know, you came together as a team, and I'm so glad you did, because like you said, Constance, you didn't have your art, you know, out there as a portfolio, like I want to be you know, in children's publishing, and I wouldn't have found you. And I was just such an incredible thing when I saw your art, and then when I met you in person too. Just the what you were able to capture in the outline of the portraits and the washes with the watercolor, and I just immediately fell in love with the art that you had done for the book. And it's exactly that. It's accessible, but it's also incredibly artistic, and it makes sense to hear you say that you gathered that inspiration from your students. I think that's such a beautiful thing. And really, I mean, all we did was take that and pull a couple things like from your art, you know, enhancing what you had already done, taking the shades and doing the block of shade underneath the text to kind of tie it together, and then making a jacket and putting it into a book format. I mean, it was done, and it was, I have to say, when I this is my turn to tell you about when I cried. So when I got the proofs in, it was, I feel like we were maybe in the middle of another fire. Something besides the pandemic was also happening, and I wanted to get the proofs to you, Constance, so you could look at them. And I had my sister-in-law who lives in Oakland take them, and you picked them up at her house or something like that. But I sat with them before I could let them out of my hands, and I just cried. It's just so beautifully written and illustrated in such a simple way that I know every child will get that feeling from it. And so it is, you know, it came to us kind of like if you saw a pile of manuscripts and there was literally a diamond right in it. It was like that was Brown, and I'm so glad to have had anything to do with it. So.
I think we all feel that way. It's such an honor to have even held it. And yes, I think when the art came here to the office, it was another sob fest around the table. This is all we do at Cameron Kids. We just, but Amy, did you have anything to add about the editorial process on this one, or?
Oh, so easy. I wish every book was this easy. There was nothing to do. I think we added a stanza and a subtitle, and that was it. So no, that is so super rare. So thank you for making my job easier. I think it was meant to be, as is.
I think so too. And then Nancy and Constance, if you wanted to just wrap us up with why this book and why right now.
Well, I think kind of the way this book came together was just this beautiful universe moment. But I think when I think about right now, that this book is sort of a meeting place. And what surprises me about people's responses is that it's a meeting. There are some people who have had conversations about skin color for a long time, and there are some people who haven't. But this book is a meeting place for that. And not just for young children. I've been kind of surprised by the number of adults who never really thought about it like that, or makes them think about it in a different way or in a new way. And that's really beautiful. And I think it's just an amazing honor for me to have created a space for people to sort of come together.
Absolutely.
I don't know what to add to that. I think that, yeah, the book is a meeting place. And I think that one of the things that I like, I love Nancy's words. And I like that when you read a book to a child, it happens in two ways. And one is like very intimate at home, like with a kid maybe in bed or sitting on your lap. But the other way that I know is in the classroom, where you have all these kids and there's some who are right sitting at your feet, but then there's another row and then another row and maybe even another row depending on the size, the class size. And so I like that this is the way that the words are and the descriptions that can kind of reach all of the kids in every row and connect them through all the different descriptions, and the portraits are kind of large enough for them to see the kid who's sitting right at my feet and the kid who's way in the back maybe.
And as we're teaching in Zoom space, I've read the book to some of my colleagues' classes, and having all 25 or 30 kids put their hands up in the Zoom screen and look at each other and look at themselves and enjoy each other in a whole new way. It's really exciting, and makes the Zoom world a little less distant.
So yeah, I guess that answers why now. It's because it makes this difficult conversation accessible, and it gives an entry point, or if you're already in the conversation, it kind of enriches it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just such a beautiful piece of art, and we are beyond honored to have it on our list, as we are with all of your books. So thank you so much for crying with us, hanging in there with us through this year. And I think that we will always have a very soft spot in our hearts for the Cameron Kids Fall 20 list. And send us all your future story ideas, because we want to work with every single one of you again.
Nina, I would love to see those covers one more time. If you could hold them all up again, that would be great.
So this was A is for Apple, Unless. And then we had Get Up, Elizabeth, Even a Queen, Let's Get Out of Bed. That's the red hair that Aaliyah so brilliantly captured. And then we have The Good Song. And When You Breathe. If you look closely, those are the breath particles that Billy was mentioning. And then finally, Brown.
Wonderful. They're all beautiful.
Thank you.
So when I have a question, are you ready for questions? Ready
Yes.
for questions? So with Brown, I mean, how often is it that you get something submitted so completely? Does that happen very often?
Almost never. Would you agree, Amy?
Yeah, it's very rare. It's very rare to have a story come in that's illustrated. That is pretty perfect. Yeah, that's why we were so excited. It just was like, oh my gosh, this works. Let's do it.
Yeah. And we're able to get it out pretty quickly, because normally we'd have to have time to hire an illustrator and sketch and all of those fun steps.
Wonderful. Also, when we're first looking at the text and you're considering and the art, does it ever go in a different direction than you originally think it might, art-wise? Or sometimes does the art ever change the story at all? How does that interplay back and forth?
I would say absolutely. I mean, I think the beauty of a picture book format is the dance between the words and the art. And we, the editing of both the art and the words isn't done until the book is on press, essentially, because we're always, like, oh, maybe that should be in the artwork. Let's take that out of the text, or add it back in the text and take it out of the artwork. And then as far as the whole aesthetic of the book, I mean, usually there's like a sense of tone that we get when we first are reading it, and a vision for the art. But one of my favorite things to do is look at a portfolio and see maybe one little nugget that could be explored and expanded on, and that, you know, maybe that artist has never really done a lot of it before or in this way. And so it definitely evolves as the book is being made, for sure, and changes sometimes in the middle. I mean, we had one book that we did where it came in kind of a digital format, and then we ended up having it be painted. She painted it by hand, which completely changed the look of it.
And I think the other thing that Melissa is really good at is she just gives illustrators so much space. So often the manuscript will go with very little art direction for the first round of like, just what do you want to do? How do you see it? And then we have everyone's visions are there, and then we kind of braid them together.
Well, it's magic, if you ask me. Total magic.
Well, it's fun.
Let me look through. I have my own questions, so now I need to look through and see if anybody else did. Let's see. Lots of congratulations. Let's see. Thank you, Cameron Kids. Let's see. Oh, from Sharon. Have you had books come in with illustrations that you couldn't use?
I don't think anything complete that we couldn't use. Amy, can you think of anything?
No. Mm-mm.
You know, sometimes an agent will pair one of their illustrators with the submission as a suggestion, and we always consider that, but oftentimes end up making our own choice.
Mm-hmm. I think that maybe wraps it up for us today. Is anything else anybody out there in the audience would like to know?
Looks like Michael.
Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, hi, Michael. Yes.
Our future. Yeah. Michael has a beautiful book coming out with us that I can't wait to share with you guys next year. Let's see, any themes we will be looking for in picture books. Man, the sky's the limit. We love poetry. Thank you, Diana. And so that'll always be part of our list. We've kind of got a couple of fun, really young picture books in development that are just punchy and sweet. And then we have been very interested in, and Amy, you can speak to this even more, in sort of reimagining the picture book biography. Kind of what we or Alex, what you so beautifully did with Ode to an Onion, where it's, and also you, Sharon. So we're rooted in history, but then really looking at it from a completely different angle. And, you know, I think once picture book biographies became so hot, they come in a lot, and a lot of them read like book reports. Mm-hmm. And we just book report, chuck. And then we'll find one that's just gleaming with theme and, you know, layered meaning. And Amy, I don't know if you can think of any other themes.
No, I would say more of the same. I mean, I think this list really encapsulates our ethos in that we want to laugh, we want to cry, we want to be inspired, we want to do good in the world, and I think we want to learn something. I think this list really shows that beautifully, and so we're just trying to do that in every list and try to balance out each list with a little bit of everything. And we love to take risks. I mean, I think that's one thing that sets our list apart from others, perhaps, is that we're really looking to work on books that are really meaningful and mean something to us. It's a lot of work to do a book, and it's a lot of work. It's expensive. The world is changing. You know, we're in this climate crisis where, you know, I don't know about you, but I question things about like trees for books. Like, how do we do that? How do we do that in a conscientious way? So I don't know. It's just constantly pushing our list in such a way that we can be as, I don't know, conscientious as possible in all ways, I would say.
Another question from Sharon. I love the idea of political poetry. Any chance you can do that for children YA?
Sure, Nancy. That's to you.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in very interesting times. So I think I'm open to any and everything right now in terms of, opening up our eyes to things and getting kids involved in process and being citizens from a young age. So absolutely.
I think the big part of political poetry, no matter what the age of the audience is that one cannot be so, it's kind of like when you talked about a biography being a book report, political poetry that is just pontificating is incredibly boring and off-putting. But when making a human connection is central to the subject matter, then something powerful can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's do that.
Oh, and Sharon says she specifically asked that because Nancy does that, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. This is really wonderful. So
I know you guys have been on a long run this week. So go home and crash. I guess you are.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank all the independent booksellers. We would just be at a loss without you, and we're so grateful for you right now. So keep doing the good work.
Well, we're very codependent with our publishing partners on this. So, and all the wonderful authors and illustrators. We wouldn't be here at all if it weren't for you. So let's continue on together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.